Welcome back to the channel. Thank you guys for hanging with me on this Wednesday. And if you've taken some time out of your busy schedules to support the channel with comments and likes, I really do appreciate that. All right, so my biggest problem that I run into as we get into the end of summer, beginning of fall, is fish will leave your favorite spot. Maybe it's a hump, maybe it's a drain, and they'll just go because an extra food source is now available. That big pot of bait fish swims by them, and they're out becoming pelagic fish chasing bait. And it's very frustrating because there's no reason for those fish to leave. You didn't catch too many of them. There wasn't a big weather change, but a group of bait can really start making the fish move around. So I think it's important to look for areas where the fish are kind of in a dead end. And it's not just the backs of creeks, short pockets or something like that. It's also the type of structure you're going to fish. Flats are a really good place to look. Road beds on flats, humps that are kind of secluded away from places where the bass can swim. And there's a lot of baits that you need to implement this time of year. So I'm going to give you a couple of those baits, and I'm going to just give you a couple scenarios that I find happen quite often this time of year. So anytime that you have fish on a really isolated piece of structure, like a hump next to a creek channel, those can be some of the worst places to have fish just leave as the bait starts becoming really balled up and off the main river into the creeks. And fish are going to be around because they know they need to be migrating that way. And then when that bait comes by, they lose their mind, and you'll see them schooling off the other side of the hump or whatever it is, but they're gone. They're not going to be caught the way you've been catching them. So to get yourself out of those situations, I think it's very important to start really looking for big flats. Fish are going to use those flats, and unless they go off the side of the flat back into the creek channel, they're catchable. You just have to cover water, and you got to figure out what they're relating to. So anytime there's cover, it could be log jams, it could be bushes, grass, whatever is on that flat, there's going to be little specific places on there that hold the fish. So anytime you get a bite, mark a waypoint, because there's something, if it's the current or just the way the cover is set up, maybe it's the grass, how it's growing, or just something in the water, there's a reason they're there. So mark a waypoint when you get bit, because a lot of times you can come back to those places. They're not going to be there all day, but you hit it enough times throughout the day, you should get a bite. So anytime there's less than 5 feet of water over the fish's head, I like a topwater. Pick any topwater, a spook, a buzzbait, a popper. I also really like to use those subsurface baits that are designed for flats. A chatterbait, a spinnerbait, a lipless crankbait. Those baits that they're designed for flats, and then you can fish them around cover. You can deflect them off the wood, pop them out of the grass, but it seems like those are the type places. So if your fish aren't all the way pushed into the backs of the creeks yet, look for any of those flats that are out near the main lake at the mouths of the creek. That is a great place. And then go a little deeper. Are there road beds around those flats? Are there humps on those flats? That's what's going to be holding the fish. That's where the fish are going to be ambushing and pushing the bait. So now it's not so much about our typical June, July, August patterns where the fish are there. We can keep coming back to them. All those good spots that tend to last all summer long are now starting to fizzle out. Bass are going to start getting on bait fish, and that's everything. Now, here's the last part that I think is very important when you pick the bait. Now, you may see millions of little tiny bait fish swimming around, big schools of them, and they could be everywhere. It's very important to have bluegill imitators, not just threadfin imitators, but also gizzard shad imitators. Have all those different baits, because what will happen on specific lakes, the big ones aren't going to just key in on the little threadfin. Some lakes, it's all about threadfin. Some lakes, it's all about blueback herring, but you got to figure out what it's all about. Some lakes, it's all about gizzard shad. And as we get later into the year, you really have to key in on a specific type of bait fish. Maybe it's bluegill. Maybe if you want to be consistent, you got to just fish for bass that are eating bluegill. So it's very important to figure out what the right forage is. It's not always just going to be little tiny shad. You can still catch bass around the little tiny shad, but there's other bait fish out there too. It's not just the shad. It's all about the bait, but it's not just the little shad. So maybe it's bluegill. Fish around bluegill are going to be a little bit easier to pattern. The bluegill aren't as transient. They will stay in one area, and then, you know, the bass will be in those areas. The gizzard shad, same thing. They may be up on that flat for a reason. They're not leaving. So that will cut down a whole lot of search time if you can get on a specific bait fish that isn't swimming out in the channel, back on the flat, back in the channel, winds blowing them around and all that. If they're just in one little area, it'll make the fishing a lot easier. So try those baits. Good luck to you guys, and I'll see you on the water.